The autumn wind carried the acrid scent of smoke before Hannah Lockhart even saw the flames. She had been gathering herbs in the meadow beyond her small homestead when the first plume of black smoke rose against the Montana sky. Her heart seized in her chest, and the basket of wild sage and yarrow tumbled from her grasp as she gathered her skirts and ran, her lungs burning with each desperate breath. By the time she crested the hill overlooking her small valley, the roof of her cabin had already collapsed in a shower of embers and flame. Hannah stood frozen as everything she owned in the world disappeared before her eyes. The fire consumed the modest cabin her late father had built with his own hands 5 years earlier. They had come west together after her mother's passing, seeking a fresh start in the promising lands of Montana Territory. Now, at 22, Hannah found herself truly alone, watching helplessly as the hungry flames devoured the last physical connection to her family. Tears streamed down her dirt-smudged face as she finally forced her legs to move. Hannah ran down the hillside, the tall prairie grass whipping against her skirts. Even from a distance, the heat of the blaze forced her to stop several yards away. The crackling roar drowned out her cries as she watched her home. The small vegetable garden, the chicken coop, the furniture her father had crafted all disappear in the merciless inferno. "Miss, get back." A deep voice cut through her grief, and strong hands pulled her away just as a section of burning wall collapsed outward, sending a shower of sparks into the air where she had stood moments before. Hannah struggled against the stranger's grip. "My home. Everything I have is in there." "It's gone, miss. Nothing to be done now except keep yourself alive." The man's voice was firm but not unkind as he pulled her to a safer distance. When the immediate danger had passed, Hannah turned to face her rescuer. He stood tall against the backdrop of the setting sun, his face shadowed by the wide brim of a worn leather hat. Dust covered his denim pants and faded blue shirt, and a bandana hung loosely around his neck. Everything about him spoke of the trail a cowboy passing through, no doubt. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely audible over the continued crackling of the flames. He removed his hat, revealing sun-bronzed features and eyes the color of a summer sky. "Name's Adam Nichols, madam. I was riding by when I saw the smoke." His gaze swept over the burning remains of her home, then back to her tear-streaked face. "This your place?" Hannah nodded, unable to find words as the reality of her situation crashed over her. Everything she owned in the world was gone: her clothes, her father's Bible, her mother's locket, the small amount of money she had saved. With winter approaching in just a few short months, she had nowhere to go and nothing with which to start over. "I don't understand how this happened," she said, watching as the last of the roof timbers gave way. "I was so careful with the hearth fire, always." Adam squinted at the remains. Could have been anything. Lightning strike from yesterday's storm might have smoldered in the roof beams, or maybe a spark from your chimney caught in the dry wood. He glanced at the cloudless sky, now stained orange and red as the sun set. Whatever started it, it's not leaving much behind. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling the evening chill despite the heat from the fire. The reality of her situation was becoming clearer with each passing moment. She was alone in the Montana Territory with nothing but the clothes on her back and no family to turn to. "You got people nearby?" Adam asked, as if reading her thoughts. She shook her head. "No. My father passed last winter. It was just me." Her voice caught. "I don't know what I'm going to do." Adam studied her for a long moment, then looked westward toward the mountains where the first stars were beginning to appear. After a contemplative silence, he turned back to Hannah, determination etched on his weathered face. "You'll have a home before winter ends," he said with unexpected conviction. "That's a promise, miss." "Hannah," she supplied. "Hannah Lockhart." "Miss Lockhart," he acknowledged with a slight nod. I work at the Double Creek Ranch about 10 miles west of here. The owner, Mr. Brooks, is a fair man. I expect he'd be willing to offer you a position there short-handed in the house since his wife took ill. At the very least, it would give you shelter until you figure things out. Hannah stared at the stranger, stunned by his offer and uncertain whether to trust him. Yet something in his steady gaze told her this was no false promise. I can't impose. You wouldn't be imposing. You'd be working, Adam cut in. And I aim to help you rebuild come spring. That's my word. The fire had died down considerably now, reduced to a smoldering ruin that had once been her life. Night was falling fast, and Hannah realized she had nowhere else to go. Pride had little place in survival. I accept your help, Mr. Nichols, she said finally. Thank you. Adam gave a short nod and whistled for his horse, a sturdy chestnut gelding that had been grazing nearby. Not much we can do here tonight. Come morning, we can see what might be salvaged. He extended his hand. You'll ride with me to Double Creek. We should make it before it gets too late. Hannah hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His calloused palm was warm and strong as he helped her onto the horse, then swung up behind her. As they rode away from the smoldering remains of her home, Hannah couldn't hold back the tears that came with each jolt of the horse beneath them. I'm sorry, she whispered, embarrassed by her display of emotion. No need for sorry, Miss Lockhart, Adam replied, his voice a gentle rumble behind her. Some losses cut deep, but tomorrow's another day, and I meant what I said. You'll have a home again. As they rode through the deepening twilight, Hannah found herself wondering at the curious twist of fate that had brought this stranger into her life at her darkest hour. She didn't know if she could trust his promise, but for now, she had little choice but to go forward and hope that somehow she would find the strength to rebuild what she had lost. The Double Creek Ranch loomed out of the darkness like a small town unto itself. Even in the dim moonlight, Hannah could make out the sprawling main house, several outbuildings, a bunkhouse, and multiple corrals. Lamplight glowed in several windows, and as they approached, a dog began to bark, announcing their arrival. Adam guided his horse toward the main house, a handsome two-story structure with a wide porch wrapping around the front. He dismounted first, then reached up to help Hannah down. Her legs felt unsteady after the long ride, and she was grateful for his steadying hand. Wait here, he instructed, tying his horse to a hitching post. I'll speak with Mr. Brooks. Hannah remained beside the horse, painfully aware of her disheveled appearance. Her dark hair had mostly come loose from its pins. Her face was smudged with soot, and her dress was torn and stained from her frantic run. She tried in vain to smooth her skirts and tidy her hair as Adam knocked on the front door. The door opened to reveal a stocky man in his 50s with a full salt and pepper beard. His expression shifted from mild irritation to concern as Adam spoke in low tones, occasionally gesturing back toward Hannah. After a few minutes, the older man nodded and beckoned Hannah forward. Miss Lockhart, he called, his voice gruff but not unfriendly. Please come in. Hannah approached, feeling suddenly self-conscious. Thank you, sir. I apologize for the intrusion. No intrusion, the man replied. I'm Edward Brooks. Adam here tells me you've had a terrible misfortune. He stood aside to let her enter. My home is open to those in need. The interior of the house was warm and well-appointed, though not ostentatious. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes appeared from what Hannah assumed was the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Martha, Mr. Brooks addressed her. This is Miss Lockhart. Her home burned down today. She'll be staying with us for a while. Martha's expression immediately softened with sympathy. Oh, you poor dear. Come, let's get you cleaned up and find you something to eat. Hannah glanced back at Adam, who remained by the doorway, hat in hand. Thank you, Mr. Nichols, she said softly. He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. I'll check on you tomorrow, Miss Lockhart. Get some rest. With that, he replaced his hat and disappeared into the night, leaving Hannah to follow Martha up the stairs to what would be her temporary sanctuary. The next morning arrived with painful clarity. For a brief moment upon waking, Hannah forgot the events of the previous day. Then reality crashed down upon her as she took in the unfamiliar room with its simple but comfortable furnishings. Martha had provided a nightgown and promised to find more suitable clothes for her today. Hannah dressed in her soot-stained dress, having no alternative, and made her way downstairs. She found Martha in the kitchen, kneading dough at a large wooden table. "Good morning, dear," Martha greeted her warmly. "There's coffee on the stove and porridge keeping warm. Help yourself." "Thank you, Mrs. Brooks," Hannah replied, filling a mug with the strong black coffee. "I want to earn my keep. Please tell me how I can help." Martha studied her appraisingly. "Mr. Brooks mentioned you might take a position here. Can you cook?" "Yes, madam, and so. I've managed my own household since my mother passed several years ago." "Good. We've been short-handed since I've had to spend more time tending to the missus." Martha's expression grew somber. "Mrs. Brooks Clara has been ill these past few months. Consumption, the doctor says. She needs constant care now." Hannah's heart went out to the family. "I'm sorry to hear that. I've some experience with herbal remedies that might ease her discomfort, if you'd allow it." Martha looked intrigued. "That would be most welcome. But first, let's find you some proper clothes. Clara was about your size before she took ill. I'm sure she wouldn't mind you borrowing a few things until you can get your own." After breakfast, Hannah was given 2 serviceable dresses, undergarments, and a pair of slightly worn boots that fit reasonably well. Once properly attired, she felt more like herself again, despite the lingering sense of loss that threatened to overwhelm her at unexpected moments. She was in the kitchen helping Martha prepare lunch when Adam appeared at the back door, hat in hand. Hannah felt an unexpected flutter in her stomach at the sight of him standing there, looking somehow more approachable in the daylight than he had the night before. "Miss Lockhart," he greeted her with a tip of his hat. "I'm headed back to your property to see what might be salvaged. Thought you might want to come along." Hannah wiped her hands on her borrowed apron. "Yes. I'd like that very much." She turned to Martha. "If that's all right?" "Of course, dear. Take whatever time you need. We'll manage here." Within the hour, Hannah found herself once again riding with Adam, this time seated on her own horse borrowed from the ranch's stable. The journey seemed shorter in daylight, and all too soon they crested the hill overlooking what remained of her home. The sight was no less devastating in the harsh light of day. Where her cabin had stood was now a blackened rectangle of ash and debris. The stone chimney remained standing like a lonely sentinel, but everything else had been reduced to charred rubble. Adam tied the horses to a nearby tree and helped Hannah down. They approached the ruins slowly, the acrid smell of burned wood still hanging in the air. "Be careful where you step," Adam cautioned. "Some timbers might still be smoldering underneath." Hannah nodded, picking her way carefully around the perimeter. She pointed to what had been her father's workshop, a small structure attached to the main cabin. "Perhaps there's something salvageable there. My father's tools were valuable." Adam moved ahead of her, testing the stability of the remaining structure before allowing her to enter. The roof had partially collapsed, but the far corner remained somewhat intact. Together, they sifted through the debris, uncovering a metal toolbox that had survived the blaze, though its wooden handle was charred away. "This is something, at least," Adam said, setting it aside. "Good tools fetch a fair price, or you can use them to help rebuild." They continued searching, finding a few cast-iron cookware pieces, some metal farming implements, and miraculously, a small metal box containing Hannah's mother's wedding ring and a few coins her father had saved. "Oh!" Hannah exclaimed, tears springing to her eyes as she cradled the singed box. "I thought this was lost forever." Adam watched her, his expression softening. Sometimes the most important things find a way to survive. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, salvaging what they could and loading it onto the horses. It wasn't much, certainly not enough to rebuild a life, but it was a start. As they prepared to leave, Hannah turned for one last look at the place that had been her home. "My father built this cabin with such hope," she said softly. "He believed we were making a fresh start here." Adam stood beside her, his presence somehow reassuring. "Nothing says you can't make another fresh start, Miss Lockhart." She looked up at him, struck by the quiet confidence in his voice. "You really believe I can rebuild?" "I do," he replied simply, "and I intend to help you do it before winter's end, just like I promised." There was something in his steady gaze that made her believe him, despite the enormity of the task ahead. As they rode back toward Double Creek Ranch, Hannah felt the first tentative stirrings of hope taking root alongside her grief. In the weeks that followed, Hannah settled into life at Double Creek Ranch. She proved herself invaluable in the kitchen and took on much of the household management to allow Martha more time with Mrs. Brooks, whose condition continued to deteriorate despite Hannah's herbal remedies to ease her discomfort. October gave way to November, bringing colder nights and the first dusting of snow to the valley. Hannah divided her time between household duties and planning for her future. Mr. Brooks had generously allowed her to stay on through the winter, with the understanding that she would move on in the spring when weather permitted building a new home. Adam remained true to his word, stopping by the main house several times a week to discuss plans for her new cabin. He'd ride in from his duties on the range, often bringing small gifts, a book he thought she might enjoy, a length of ribbon for her hair, or wild honey from a hive he'd discovered. Each gesture touched Hannah in ways she hadn't expected, warming something inside her that had grown cold since her father's passing. One crisp November afternoon, Hannah was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when Adam approached, leading his horse. She smiled at the sight of him, a reaction she'd stopped trying to suppress weeks ago. "Good afternoon, Mr. Nichols," she called, securing a sheet to the line. "Miss Lockhart," he returned with a tip of his hat. "Fine day for laundry." "Indeed it is. The wind will dry these sheets in no time." She tucked a stray curl behind her ear, aware of his gaze following the movement. "Have you come to discuss the cabin plans again?" "Actually, I've come with something more than plans." He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out several folded papers. "I spoke with the land office in town yesterday. Your father's homestead claim is still valid, and as his heir, you have every right to rebuild there." Hannah took the papers, scanning them with growing excitement. "This is wonderful news." "There's more," Adam continued, unable to hide his enthusiasm. "I've arranged for lumber to be delivered from the sawmill next week. Mr. Brooks has agreed to let some of us take time to help with the building once the cattle drive is finished." Hannah stared at him, overwhelmed by his efforts on her behalf. "Adam, I don't know what to say. This is far more than I ever expected." He shifted slightly, appearing almost bashful. "There's something else I wanted to ask you, Hannah." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and the sound of it on his lips sent a pleasant shiver through her despite the afternoon warmth. "Yes?" she prompted when he hesitated. "There's to be a harvest dance in town this Saturday. I wondered if you might accompany me." He cleared his throat. "As my guest, that is." Hannah felt a blush rise to her cheeks. "I would be honored, Adam. Thank you for asking." His smile transformed his usually serious face, revealing a dimple in his right cheek she'd never noticed before. "I'll come by around 6 then, if that suits you." "It suits me perfectly," she replied, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. As he turned to leave, Hannah called after him. "Adam? Why are you doing all this for me? You hardly knew me when you made your promise." He paused, considering her question carefully. "My pa always said a man's word is his bond. When I saw you standing there watching your whole world burn, I made you a promise. I aim to keep it." He hesitated, then added more softly, "And I've come to care about what happens to you. Hannah Lockhart." With that, he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving Hannah with her heart beating a rapid rhythm against her ribs, and a smile she couldn't contain spreading across her face. The town of Riverside wasn't large by any measure, but on the night of the harvest dance, it seemed like every resident for 20 miles had crowded into the community hall. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the festivities, and a small band of local musicians played lively tunes that had couples spinning across the wooden floor. Hannah stood near the entrance, suddenly self-conscious in her borrowed dress. Martha had insisted she wear one of Clara's finer gowns, a deep blue affair with delicate lace trim that fit Hannah as if it had been made for her. Martha had also helped arrange her dark hair in a becoming style, with soft curls framing her face. "You look beautiful." Adam's voice came from behind her, and Hannah turned to find him standing there in his Sunday best clean trousers, a pressed shirt, and a vest that highlighted the breadth of his shoulders. His usual cowboy hat was absent, revealing hair the color of sun-bleached wheat that he'd clearly attempted to tame with water. "Thank you," she replied, taking in his transformation from ranch hand to gentleman with appreciative eyes. "You look quite handsome yourself." He offered his arm with a slight bow. "Shall we join the dancing?" Hannah placed her hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath the fabric of his shirt. "I should warn you, it's been some time since I've danced." "That makes two of us," he admitted with a grin. "We'll remember together." Any awkwardness quickly disappeared as Adam led her onto the dance floor. His hand at her waist was respectful but firm as they moved to the music, finding their rhythm together with surprising ease. Hannah couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so carefree, twirling beneath the lantern light with a man whose blue eyes never left her face. Between dances, Adam brought her punch and introduced her to people from town: the general store owner, the blacksmith and his wife, the schoolteacher. Everyone welcomed her warmly, expressing sympathy for her loss and interest in her rebuilding plans. "Word travels fast," Hannah observed after meeting what felt like half the town. "Small communities take care of their own," Adam replied. "And like it or not, you're one of us now." The evening grew late, and the band shifted to slower, more romantic tunes. Adam's hand found hers again, and this time, when they moved together, he held her closer than before. Hannah could feel the steady beat of his heart as they swayed to the music. "I've been meaning to ask," he said softly, his breath warm against her hair. "What brought you and your father out here in the first place?" Hannah sighed, memories washing over her. "My mother died when I was 16. Consumption, like Mrs. Brooks. Afterward, my father couldn't bear to stay in our hometown in Ohio. Too many memories. He'd heard stories about the Montana Territory, the beauty, the opportunity. He was a carpenter by trade and thought his skills would be useful in a growing region." She smiled sadly. He was right about the beauty, at least. Adam's hand tightened slightly on her waist. "And about the opportunity. This land has a way of testing people, but it rewards those who persevere." "Is that why you came west?" she asked, realizing how little she knew about him despite all he'd done for her. A shadow crossed his face. "Not exactly. I left home young, had a disagreement with my father about my future. He wanted me to take over the family business in St. Louis, but I wanted something different. I headed west with nothing but the clothes on my back and a stubborn determination to make my own way." His expression softened. "Been working ranches for 8 years now. Double Creek is the first place that's felt like it could be home." Hannah studied his face, seeing beyond the confident exterior to the young man who'd struck out alone to forge his path. "We're not so different, you and I," she observed, "both seeking a place to belong." The music ended, and they stood still for a moment, reluctant to break the connection between them. Finally, Adam cleared his throat. "Would you like some air? It's getting warm in here." Hannah nodded, and he led her outside onto the small porch that fronted the community hall. The November night was crisp and clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Montana sky. Hannah pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "Cold?" Adam asked, concern in his voice. "Just a bit," she admitted. Without hesitation, he removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body and carried his scent leather, pine, and something indefinably masculine that made Hannah's pulse quicken. "Better?" he asked, standing close enough that she could see the reflection of starlight in his eyes. "Much better," she replied softly. "Thank you for bringing me tonight, Adam. I haven't enjoyed myself this much in a very long time." He reached up slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and tucked a stray curl behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her cheek, gentle as a summer breeze. "Neither have I, Hannah." The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken possibilities. Hannah felt herself leaning toward him almost imperceptibly, drawn by something powerful and sweet. The community hall door burst open, shattering the moment as several laughing couples spilled onto the porch. Adam stepped back, his hand falling away from her face, though his eyes still held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Perhaps we should head back to the ranch," he suggested, his voice slightly rough. "It's getting late." Hannah nodded, simultaneously disappointed and relieved by the interruption. Whatever was growing between them felt too precious, too fragile to rush. The ride back to Double Creek was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts as their horses picked their way along the moonlit trail. When they reached the ranch, Adam helped her down from her horse, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, his voice low. "We're starting to clear the land for your cabin." "So soon?" Hannah asked, surprised. "Winter won't wait," he reminded her with a small smile. "And I made you a promise." She reached out impulsively and touched his arm. "You've already done more than anyone could expect, Adam." He covered her hand with his own. "Not more than you deserve, Hannah." He hesitated, then bent down and placed a feather-light kiss on her cheek. "Good night." Hannah watched him ride toward the bunkhouse, her fingers touching the spot where his lips had been, her heart full of a hope she hadn't dared feel since the day her home burned to ashes. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity that left Hannah little time to dwell on the growing feelings between her and Adam. True to his word, he had organized a small crew of ranch hands to help clear her land and begin construction on a new cabin. The weather cooperated with unseasonably mild temperatures for late November, allowing them to make significant progress. Hannah rode out to the homestead as often as her duties at Double Creek permitted, bringing food for the workers and lending a hand wherever she could. She found a quiet joy in watching her new home take shape, a cabin slightly larger than her previous one, with sturdy log walls and a stone fireplace that Adam insisted would keep the worst of winter's chill at bay. One afternoon in early December, Hannah arrived to find Adam alone at the building site, carefully fitting a window frame into place. The main structure of the cabin was nearly complete, the roof already shingled and solid against the coming winter storms. The interior still needed work, but the transformation from ash-covered ruin to promising new beginning filled Hannah with gratitude too deep for words. "Where is everyone?" she asked, dismounting and securing her horse to a nearby post. Adam looked up from his work, his face breaking into the smile she'd come to treasure. "Cattle needed tending. Mr. Brooks could only spare me today." He set down his tools and approached, taking the basket she carried. "You didn't have to bring lunch just for me." "I wanted to," she replied simply. "Besides, I've news from the main house." They sat together on a stack of lumber, sharing bread, cheese, and apple pie that Hannah had baked that morning. Adam listened attentively as she described Clara Brooks's declining condition and the doctor's most recent visit. He doesn't think she'll last until Christmas, Hannah concluded softly. Martha is devastated, though she's trying to be strong, and Mr. Brooks hardly leaves his wife's side now. Adam's expression grew solemn. Life out here takes as much as it gives sometimes. The Brooks have been kind to me since I joined the ranch 3 years ago. I hate to see them suffering. Hannah nodded, understanding all too well the pain of losing loved ones. They've been so generous to me, especially given their own troubles. I wish there was more I could do. You're doing plenty, Adam assured her. Martha says you've been running the household almost single-handedly these past weeks. Hannah shrugged modestly. It's the least I can do to repay their kindness. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, both contemplating the fragility of life and the strength found in community. After a while, Adam cleared his throat. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, he began, an uncharacteristic nervousness in his voice. Hannah looked up. Curious. What is it? He gestured toward the nearly completed cabin. I've been thinking about your situation. Even with the cabin finished, you'd be out here alone with winter coming on. It's not safe. I've managed on my own before, Hannah reminded him, though the prospect of solitary nights in her new cabin had indeed caused her some anxiety. I know you're capable, Adam said quickly. That's not in question, but even the most capable person can find themselves in trouble if a blizzard hits, or if they take ill with no one to fetch help. He paused, then continued more carefully. I've spoken with Mr. Brooks about it. He agrees you should have someone nearby, at least until spring. Hannah frowned slightly. What exactly are you suggesting? Adam took a deep breath. I'm suggesting that I build a small bunkhouse for myself nearby. Just temporary, mind you. A place where I could stay to help you get through the winter. I'd be close enough if you needed anything, but you'd still have your independence. The offer caught Hannah by surprise. You'd do that? Leave your position at the ranch? Not leave entirely, he clarified. Mr. Brooks has agreed to let me split my time. The heavy ranch work slows in winter anyway. Hannah considered his proposal, torn between practical concerns and the impropriety of having a single man living so close to her homestead. Yet the thought of Adam nearby brought an undeniable sense of security and something else, something warm that she wasn't quite ready to name. People would talk, she said finally. People always talk, Adam countered with a slight smile. But your reputation would be safe. I'd be in my own quarters, and there'd be nothing improper about it. Just a neighbor helping a neighbor through a hard time. Hannah studied his face, sensing there was more he wasn't saying. Is that all it would be, Adam? Neighborly concern? His eyes held hers steadily. You know it's more than that, Hannah. At least, for me it is. The simple admission sent her heart racing. For me as well, she confessed softly. Something powerful passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first night when he'd found her watching her world burn to the ground. Then let me stay, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Let me help you rebuild not just your home, but your life here. And perhaps, in time. He didn't finish the thought, but he didn't need to. Hannah understood what remained unspoken between them, the possibility of a future together, a shared life built from the ashes of what had been lost. All right, she agreed, feeling as though she was stepping across an invisible threshold into something new and full of promise. But no bunkhouse. There's room enough in the cabin for two. We can put up a partition until... She felt heat rise to her cheeks. Until the time is right. Adam finished for her, a new light in his eyes. He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers entwining with hers. Thank you for trusting me, Hannah. You've given me every reason to, she replied, squeezing his hand. They sat together as the December sun cast long shadows across what would soon be their home, neither feeling the need to rush what was beginning between them. They had weathered separate storms to find each other, and now, facing the Montana winter together, they had all the time in the world to see what spring would bring. The first heavy snow came a week later, blanketing the valley in pristine white and confirming the wisdom of Adam's proposal. The cabin was nearly finished, lacking only some interior details that could be completed over time, and Hannah had begun moving her meager belongings from Double Creek Ranch to her new home. Clara Brooks passed peacefully in her sleep 3 days before Christmas, her hand held by her devoted husband of 30 years. The ranch fell into mourning, and Hannah threw herself into helping with funeral arrangements and providing whatever comfort she could to the grieving family. Adam, too, remained at the main house, stepping in to manage ranch operations while Mr. Brooks attended to his personal loss. It wasn't until Christmas Eve that they finally found themselves alone together at Hannah's cabin. They arrived just as twilight was settling over the snow-covered landscape, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air as they dismounted and led their horses to the small lean Adam had constructed as a temporary stable. "Home at last," Adam said as they approached the cabin, his voice warm despite the biting cold. Hannah paused, struck by the sight before her. Lamplight glowed from within, spilling golden across the pristine snow through the windows Adam had so carefully installed. Smoke curled from the stone chimney into the darkening sky. It was a scene of such perfect tranquility that tears sprang to her eyes. "You came ahead to light the lamps," she observed, touched by his thoughtfulness. "And to start the fire," he added with a smile. "I thought we should have a proper homecoming." Inside, the cabin was warm and welcoming. Adam had indeed built a roaring fire in the massive stone fireplace, its dancing flames casting flickering shadows on the log walls. A simple wooden table and chairs stood near the cooking area, and a partition of hanging blankets divided the living space from the sleeping area, just as they had discussed. Hannah moved slowly through the cabin, running her fingers along the smooth planed surfaces and breathing in the comforting scent of new wood and wood smoke. "It's beautiful, Adam. More than I ever imagined." "There's still work to be done," he acknowledged, setting down their provisions. "But it's solid and warm. And it's yours." "Ours," Hannah corrected him softly. "At least for now." The simple word hung in the air between them, full of meaning and possibility. Adam's expression grew serious as he moved toward her, stopping within arm's reach. "I brought something for you," he said, reaching into his coat pocket. "A Christmas gift, and perhaps something more." From his pocket, he withdrew a small object wrapped in a handkerchief. Hannah accepted it with trembling fingers, carefully unfolding the cloth to reveal a beautifully carved wooden box no larger than her palm. The top was inlaid with a delicate pattern of stars, a miniature version of the Montana night sky. "Open it," Adam encouraged, his voice suddenly husky. Hannah lifted the tiny brass latch and gasped. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft fabric, lay a simple gold ring with a small pearl at its center. "It was my mother's," Adam explained, watching her face intently. "She gave it to me before I left home, said I should save it for when I found someone worth sharing my life with." He took a deep breath. "I've found her, Hannah. If you'll have me." Hannah stared at the ring, then at Adam, her heart so full she could barely speak. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" He nodded, taking her free hand in both of his. "I know it's fast. We've only known each other a few months, but some things you just know, deep in your soul." His blue eyes held hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "I love you, Hannah Lockhart. I think I started falling for you that first day, watching you stand so brave in the face of losing everything." Hannah felt tears of happiness spill onto her cheeks. "I love you too, Adam. When you promised me a home before winter's end, I never imagined you'd be offering me your heart as well. Is that a yes? He asked, a smile beginning to spread across his face. Yes, she whispered, and then louder, with all the certainty in her heart. Yes. Adam took the ring from the box with reverent fingers and slipped it onto her hand. It fit as if it had been made for her. Then he gathered her into his arms, his lips finding hers in a kiss that spoke of promises kept and new beginnings. Outside, snow began to fall again, adding another layer of white to the pristine landscape surrounding their cabin. Inside, wrapped in each other's arms before the crackling fire, Hannah and Adam shared whispered dreams of the life they would build together, children running through summer meadows, harvests gathered side by side, a love that would weather whatever storms might come. Winter might have claimed her old home, but true to his word, Adam had given Hannah a new one before the season's end, not just a structure of wood and stone, but a home built on love, trust, and the promise of a future brighter than either of them had dared to imagine. Spring came early to the Montana Valley that year, as if nature itself was eager to witness the new beginning taking shape on Hannah's homestead. The April morning dawned clear and mild, perfect for a wedding day. Hannah stood before the small mirror in what was now unquestionably their cabin, adjusting the simple wreath of wildflowers in her dark hair. Her wedding dress, a gift from Martha Brooks, was elegant without being ostentatious, its cream-colored fabric complementing Hannah's fair complexion. "You look beautiful," Martha said from the doorway, her eyes moist with emotion. Though still in mourning for Clara, she had insisted on helping Hannah prepare for her wedding day. "Adam won't know what hit him." Hannah smiled nervously. "I can hardly believe this day is finally here." The past few months had been a time of growth and discovery for them both. Adam had kept his word, sleeping in his partitioned area of the cabin while courting Hannah properly, despite the unusual living arrangement. They had worked side by side through the winter months, completing the interior of the cabin, planning for spring planting, and learning the rhythms of sharing a life together. Their decision to marry in the spring had been mutual. They wanted time to be sure, to know each other fully before taking their final vows. But with each passing day, their certainty had only grown stronger, their love deepening with shared laughter, occasional disagreements resolved with respect, and quiet evenings by the fire discussing dreams for their future. "It's time," Martha announced, checking the small clock on the mantel. "Everyone's waiting at the church." Hannah took a deep breath and reached for her bouquet of early spring blooms. "Then let's not keep them waiting any longer." The small white church in Riverside was filled to capacity when Hannah arrived. It seemed everyone in the county had turned out for the occasion. Mr. Brooks was waiting to escort her down the aisle, having graciously offered to stand in for her father. "Ready, my dear?" he asked, offering his arm. Hannah nodded, her eyes already seeking out the tall figure standing at the altar. Adam was dressed in a new black suit, his blonde hair neatly combed, his face solemn until he caught sight of her. Then his expression transformed into one of such pure joy that Hannah felt her heart might burst with happiness. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Hannah was vaguely aware of the pastor's words, of the friends surrounding them with love and support. But mostly she was conscious of Adam's hand holding hers, his steady voice as he repeated his vows, and the look in his eyes that told her she was cherished beyond measure. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor declared, and then Adam was kissing her. His arms strong around her waist as their friends erupted in cheers and applause. The celebration afterward was held at Double Creek Ranch, where tables had been set up in the yard under blossoming apple trees. There was music and dancing, a feast that showcased the best offerings from local farms, and enough goodwill to sustain the newlyweds for a lifetime. As the afternoon waned into evening, Adam took Hannah's hand and led her away from the festivities to a quiet spot overlooking the creek that gave the ranch its name. "Happy?" Mrs. Nichols? He asked, drawing her into his arms. Hannah leaned against him, savoring the newness of hearing herself addressed by his name. Happier than I ever thought possible, she admitted. When I lost my home to that fire, I thought I'd lost everything. I never imagined it would lead me to you. Adam's arms tightened around her. Sometimes the worst moments lead us to the best ones, he said thoughtfully. If I hadn't been riding by that day, if you hadn't been so brave in the face of such loss, if you hadn't made me that promise, Hannah added, turning in his embrace to face him. You'll have a home before winter ends, you said, and you kept your word. In more ways than one, Adam agreed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And now I'm making you a new promise, Hannah. Wherever life takes us, whatever challenges we face, you will always have a home with me. Not just a building, but a place where you are loved completely, just as you are. Hannah reached up to touch his face, marveling at the journey that had brought them to this moment. And you with me, she whispered. Always. As the sun set on their wedding day, casting long golden rays across the Montana landscape, Adam sealed his promise with a kiss that spoke of all the days to come, days of work and rest, joy and sorrow, but always, always love. True to Adam's prediction, the homestead flourished under their combined care. By the following winter, they had expanded the cabin to include a proper bedroom and a small nursery in anticipation of the child Hannah was carrying. Adam had proven himself not just a skilled rancher, but a natural builder, adding outbuildings and fences that transformed the simple homestead into a thriving small farm. Hannah gave birth to their first child, a daughter they named Elizabeth, on a snowy December night, almost exactly 1 year after the fire that had changed the course of her life. As she held her newborn daughter in her arms, with Adam keeping proud vigil beside them, Hannah reflected on the curious path that had led her to this moment of perfect contentment. "What are you thinking about?" Adam asked softly, his finger captured in their daughter's tiny grip. Hannah smiled up at him, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such happiness. "I was thinking about promises kept," she replied, "and homes found in the most unexpected places." Adam bent to kiss her forehead, then their daughter's. "Home is wherever we're together," he said simply. "That's one promise I intend to keep forever." As the winter wind howled outside their snug cabin, the fire burned bright in the hearth Adam had built with his own hands. Hannah closed her eyes, surrounded by the warmth of her family, secure in the knowledge that some endings were merely disguised beginnings, and that sometimes the greatest blessings arose from the ashes of what was lost.